Good morning. Today and this week, we're going to be working on describing the plot. This goes along with RL 6.3. Describe how a particular story's or drama's plot unfolds in a series of episodes as the plot moves towards a resolution. In a story or play, the plot is the series of episodes or events that make up the story. Like a trail of footprints, they lead to the resolution. In other words, the plot is what happens from the beginning to the of the story to the end. Okay, so plot is a series of episodes or events that make up a story. It is what happens from the beginning to the end. These episodes are moments in the story that are driven by a conflict or a struggle. A conflict is a struggle that the main character tries to overcome. If we look at these images below, we can use these to kind of tell what we like to call this plot mountain. I'm going to show you this graphic organizer. It kind of looks like it starts at the bottom and then goes up and then comes back down. So it always starts off with exposition, which is the exposition is the beginning. Okay. And then some things happen from the beginning. It's your introduction. And then things happen and you get your rising action, which leads to the climax. And let's talk about what the climax is. In most stories and plays, one event leads to another, just like this, unfolding in a way that increases tension. Okay, that's important. And builds up to a turning point called the climax, which is the moment of greatest suspense, surprise, or excitement. Think of a plot as a roller coaster ride or mountain, like we just talked about. The events move you up until you reach the very top and then send you zooming down to the story's end. So after the climax, you get some things that happen that are going towards the resolution, which is the end. And then at the end, usually your conflict is solved on the resolution. Okay, so this is what we're going to be practicing. Let's take a look at our story in our plot mountain or plot roller coaster here. So at the beginning, there's a storm at sea, and it causes the boat to crash on these rocks of a tiny island. And search planes miss the island despite the survivors' efforts to signal for help. So they're writing an SOS, and that's a big signal in the sand. So that leads up to the climax, and you can notice that they look pretty desolate and desperate. Supplies are running out. As their last resort, they send a message in a bottle. It says, "There it goes, our last chance for rescue." In the following action, a fisherman from a nearby, and you don't see this in the picture, but in this story, the following action would be that a fisherman from a nearby island finds the bottle. In the resolution, the fisherman rescues the survivors. Okay. All right. So let's keep going and practicing this. We're gonna actually look at a story called Alma's First Cattle Drive, and we're gonna be thinking about the plot. And we're gonna start. And I want you to think while we're reading the story: what's the exposition? What's the rising? What's the climax? Then after the climax, what's the falling action? And what's the resolution? Okay. So I'm going to read, and we're going to be thinking about all of those parts of the story, all the parts of the plot while we read. Alma's first cattle drive. Blinding lightning flashed across the sky, followed by deafening thunder and driving rain. Alma had grown up listening to her father's astounding stories of cattle drives. She had always wanted to join in, but her father told her she wasn't ready. Now he was finally giving her the chance to prove to him that she would be more help than trouble on the trail. This was her first cattle drive, and the weather was Alma's first challenge. When they reached the river, Alma instantly noticed that the water was dangerously high. When the cattle began to cross at a shallow spot, Alma was the only one to notice a calf getting swept up in the current. Alma charged into the water and stopped her horse downstream from the calf to keep it from losing its footing. Okay, so this is the first part of the story. We're going to stop for a minute so that we can kind of look and think about the parts of the story. So how does the story's plot build to a climax? One plot episode leads to the next until Alma must act. This is this critical moment. Again, remember the climax was a critical moment. Okay. So at the beginning, we can talk about our exposition. That's our beginning. Alma goes on her first cattle drive, but a terrible storm has made it dangerous. And then she gets a conflict. She struggles to prove herself to her father and so she kind of has, I see right here, I'm seeing two conflicts. One, she struggles to prove herself to her father, and then keeping the animals on the cattle drive safe. They are two conflicts, but they do go together because in order to prove herself, she has to keep the animals safe. So let's think about what the rising action is. Okay, so let's go back to our story and kind of look. So here, right in this area right here, you have your beginning, your exposition. Okay, and it also kind of gives you what the problem is. She always wanted to join the cattle drives, but her father told her she wasn't ready, and so and then she gets to the river and she notices that the water is dangerously high. That's part of the conflict. And the big part of the conflict was that a calf was getting swept up in the current. Okay? So conflict right here and right here. Then she charged into the water and stopped her horse downstream from the calf to keep it from losing its footing. So to me, this looks like a pretty exciting part right here. Okay, so the most exciting part is what I just highlighted. So let's think about our rising action. After she struggles to prove herself from her father and she's struggling to keep those animals safe from the dangerously high water, then the calf gets swept up in the current. So our rising action is the calf gets swept up in the current. And that leads to our climax that Alma charged into the water and stopped her horse downstream to keep the calf safe. Okay, so I've got my climax. We're going to read on to see the rest of the plot. Remember, the plot is the stages, your exposition, and I'm going to go back over those, your exposition, your rising action, your climax. So we've reached to the climax of our story. Now we're going to think about falling action and resolution for the rest of the story. Okay? Alma stayed there in the stinging rain, her horse breathing hard beneath her. She was cold and hungry, but she kept her horse on the edge of the shallow riverbank until each animal had safely passed. When she finally rode ashore, her father waved to get Alma's attention. He paused for just a moment to tip his hat to her before they continued. Alma knew then that she had proven herself to be a valuable member of the team. So earlier, one of her things that she really needed to do, that she wanted to do, was to prove herself to her dad that she was a valuable member of the cattle drive, that she was able to handle it. And then there was dangerous weather that was an extra challenge. So I just want to keep that conflict in mind while I'm thinking about what the resolution is. Okay. So let's take a look at our question down here. Which sentence best shows the resolution of the story. So we're looking for the resolution. And remember, when you have a resolution, it's really important. This is going to help you a lot when you're asked questions about a resolution. Resolution equals usually, I'm going to put this usually, because some novels have, continued problems, so you go to the next novel, but in shorter stories like this, usually your problem is solved. Okay? So just remember usually. All right, so let's take a look. Which sentence shows the resolution? A says she was cold and hungry, but she kept her horse on the edge of the shallow riverbank until each animal had safely passed. So she doesn't have all of her problems solved here because she's cold and hungry still. Everything's hasn't passed yet. Okay. So what this kind of reminds me of right here is maybe it's not at the resolution yet, but before the resolution, there are some events that happen that lead to the resolution, and we call those falling action. So this part right here is our falling action. Let's look at B. Alma stayed there in the stinging rain, her horse breathing hard beneath her. Again, that is still, her problem is not yet solved, and she's still in falling action there. Let's look at C. When she finally rode ashore, her father waved to get Alma's attention. Okay, well this is closer to the resolution, so maybe. Let's look at D. Alma knew then that she had proven herself to be a valuable member of the team. Okay, well D is our best answer, and the way that I know that is because I remember from the very beginning when she wanted to join in on the cattle drives, but her father felt that she wasn't ready. So in this part, it says something really important. She knew then that she had proven herself to be a valuable member of the team. So her problem was solved. Her big problem, not only did she save the calf, but she proved herself, which was her main conflict, that she wanted to prove herself. And she finally did. So D is our correct answer because our problem is solved. And that's how I know that. Okay, so for the rest of this, you're going to have two stories. This, remember, is going to be due Wednesday. So I'd like you to get this ready lesson done by Wednesday. All right, today would be a perfect day to work on it because that's all I'm going to give you today is to work on your ready lesson. So you're going to read Lost in Time, and Lost in Time is a play. So you can tell it's a play because of all of the numbers of the lines, and you can also see that there are names with a colon, and that's how plays look when you're reading. Okay, so you're going to read the play and answer the 3 questions, and you're going to do this in the Google form. Okay, I do not want you to turn in a Google Doc to me. I want the answers in Google form. That's what I'm grading. Okay. Don't forget to look at your left side to help you out. The second story that you're going to work on is from Black Beauty. So you're going to read that. It's an excerpt from Black Beauty. And then you have some questions to answer for that one that have to do with the plot. And there's 4 questions with that one. So don't forget to write your answers in complete sentences and fully answer. If you want full credit, you need to cite the text. Remember what that means. That means using quotations. It could be the author said. You should say things like that. The author said, and then quotations. Or you should say things like Black Beauty's decision not to cross the bridge changes the story by, and then you can reference the text. Okay. Okay. So remember, this is all due by Wednesday. You can get started on that after this video. Thank you.